The transport ship's engines hummed their final note as Kieran stepped onto the docking platform of Zephos station. The artificial gravity felt lighter here than Earth's pull, making his gardening tools seem almost weightless in his weathered hands. Through the station's transparent walls, he caught his first glimpse of the planet below, swirling clouds of lavender and gold wrapped around continents that sparkled like scattered gems. "First time off-world?" asked the customs officer, her blue-tinted skin marking her as one of the local Zephirian inhabitants. "Yes, ma'am," Kieran replied, adjusting the strap of his equipment bag. "Here on a gardening contract." She stamped his documents with a knowing smile. "Ah, you must be heading to the Veltar estate, Lady Vexandra's place. Been waiting months for someone to take that job." The name rolled off her tongue like silk, but something in her tone suggested complexity beneath the surface. Kieran nodded politely and made his way to the surface transport, curiosity already taking root in his mind. The journey through Zephos's countryside revealed a world of breathtaking beauty. Crystalline trees stretched toward a sky painted in perpetual sunset hues, their branches chiming softly in the alien breeze. Native flowers carpeted the hills in colors that had no names in human language, their petals seeming to glow with inner light. When the transport finally stopped before ornate gates bearing the Veltar family crest, Kieran's breath caught. Lo, estate sprawled before him like something from a dream, elegant spires reaching skyward, connected by graceful bridges that seemed to float without support. But it was the gardens that truly captured his attention, or rather what the gardens had become. Once manicured pathways disappeared beneath tangles of overgrown vines. Fountains stood silent and clogged with debris. Flower beds had surrendered to weeds, and ancient trees drooped under the weight of untended growth. It was beautiful in its wildness, but heartbreaking in its abandonment. "You must be the gardener." The voice, melodious and tinged with an accent that made each word sound like music, came from behind him. Kieran turned to see her approaching, along a stone path. Lady Vexandra herself. She moved with the fluid grace characteristic of her people, her luminescent skin casting a subtle glow in the gathering dusk. Her hair, a shade of deep violet that caught the light, was woven with silver threads that might have been jewelry, or simply natural coloring. She wore flowing robes that seemed to shift color as she walked, and her eyes, large and opalescent, held depths that spoke of centuries of life experience. "Kieran Hayes, my lady," he said, offering a respectful bow. "I'm here about the garden restoration." She studied him with those ancient eyes, and he felt oddly exposed, as if she could see through to his very soul. "You are younger than I expected, and more—" She paused, searching for the word. "Earnest." "I may be young, but I know gardens," Kieran replied with quiet confidence. "And this one, it wants to be beautiful again. I can feel it." For the first time, something that might have been a smile touched the corners of her mouth. "Can you? How interesting. Most of your species see only what is, not what could be." As she led him toward the main house, Kieran caught glimpses of what the gardens had once been. Glimpses of paradise lost, waiting for the right hands to coax it back to life. The first week passed in comfortable routine. Kieran rose with Zephos's twin sons, their amber and rose light painting the estate in ethereal hues. He worked methodically through the gardens, clearing pathways and assessing what could be saved versus what needed replanting. The alien soil felt different beneath his fingers, richer somehow, almost alive with possibilities. Lady Vexandra maintained her distance initially, appearing only as a graceful silhouette watching from her tower balcony. But gradually, her curiosity seemed to overcome her reserve. On the 8th morning, she appeared at the garden's edge carrying a delicate crystal pitcher. "The morning grows warm," she said, her voice carrying that musical quality that made even simple statements sound like poetry. "I thought you might require refreshment." The liquid she poured was unlike anything Kieran had tasted, sweet with hints of flowers he couldn't identify, cooling his throat in a way that seemed to reach his very soul. "This is incredible. What is it?" "Essence of night-blooming cerulean. They grow wild in our northern provinces," She settled onto a moss-covered stone bench, her robes pooling around her like liquid starlight. Tell me about Earth's gardens. Are they truly as diverse as the old stories claim? Kieran found himself describing rose gardens in England, cherry blossoms in Japan, the vast sunflower fields of his home state. As he spoke, he noticed how intently she listened, her opalescent eyes reflecting genuine fascination. On Earth, we have a saying, he said, carefully transplanting a struggling vine to better soil. A garden is a grand teacher. It teaches patience and careful watchfulness. It teaches industry and thrift. Above all, it teaches entire trust. Trust, she repeated, tasting the word. Yes, gardens require faith in tomorrow. Her expression grew distant. I had forgotten that. Days blended into weeks. Their conversations grew longer, more personal. She told him about Zephirian customs, how her people lived for centuries, forming deep bonds that lasted lifetimes. How the loss of such a bond could leave one feeling untethered, purposeless. My mate Kethvar tended these gardens, she revealed one afternoon as Kieran worked to restore an ornate fountain. He had a gift, could make anything grow. These hands, she looked down at her elegant fingers, were made for music, for art. Not for nurturing life. But you've kept some things alive, Kieran observed, gesturing toward a corner where exotic blooms thrived despite the general neglect. Those couldn't have survived without care. She followed his gaze, surprise flickering across her features. Yes, I suppose I did tend to those. They were his favorites. Then you do have the gift, Kieran said gently. Sometimes we just need to remember how to use it. Their shared meals became a treasured ritual. Vexandra would bring exotic, Zephirian delicacies while Kieran prepared simple earth dishes with ingredients grown in her soil. She laughed, actually laughed, when he tried to explain the concept of a peanut butter sandwich, the sound like silver bells in the garden air. People put the paste of ground nuts with the preserved essence of fruit between bread? She asked, her nose wrinkling delicately. Don't knock it until you try it. Kieran grinned, secretly delighting in her reaction. One evening, as they sat sharing dinner beneath strings of bioluminescent flowers that had begun blooming under his hair, Vexandra asked quietly, Do you ever feel lonely, Kieran? So far from your own kind? He considered the question carefully. Sometimes, but loneliness isn't about being surrounded by your own species. It's about connection, understanding. I feel less lonely here, with you, than I did in crowds back on Earth. She was quiet for a long moment, her luminescent skin pulsing slightly. What he'd learned was a sign of deep emotion among her people. I have been lonely for 47 of your years, she whispered. Until now, I thought it was simply my new permanent state. The garden around them seemed to hold its breath, as if the growing things sensed the significance of the moment. Kieran reached across the small table, his human hand hovering near her elegant fingers. Loneliness doesn't have to be permanent, he said softly. Gardens teach us that even the most barren soil can bloom again, given the right care. She didn't pull away when their hands finally touched, her skin warm and surprisingly familiar beneath his calloused fingers. The gardens transformed as the weeks passed, and so did the relationship between the human gardener and the Zephirian widow. What had begun as polite conversation evolved into something deeper. Shared glances that lingered, accidental touches that neither pulled away from comfortable silences that spoke volumes. Kieran found himself looking forward to more than just the work. Each morning brought the anticipation of seeing Vexandra's graceful form moving through the restored pathways, her luminescent skin catching the amber sunlight. She had begun joining him in his work, her elegant hands learning to coax life from soil with surprising aptitude. Like this? She asked one afternoon, carefully transplanting seedlings he'd started from earth stock. Her technique was tentative but gentle, natural despite her claims of having no gift for growing things. Perfect, Kieran said, kneeling beside her. This close, he could smell her unique scent, something like night-blooming jasmine mixed with ozone. You're better at this than you think." Their shoulders brushed as they worked side by side, and neither moved away. The simple contact sent warmth racing through Kieran's chest, a feeling that had nothing to do with the twin suns overhead. "Tell me about your mate," Kieran said gently one day as they sat by the newly restored central fountain. The question had been building in him for weeks, born of genuine curiosity and perhaps a touch of something that might have been jealousy. Vexandra's expression grew soft, touched with the particular sadness of treasured memories. Kethavar was passionate. Everything he did with his whole being. When he loved, it was with the intensity of solar flares. When he gardened, he poured his soul into every seed. She trailed her fingers in the fountain's clear water. "We bonded when I was barely past my first century, young for my people. He was my first everything." "What happened to him?" Kieran asked quietly. "A transport accident in the outer system. Instantaneous, they said. One moment our bond was strong across the stars, the next—" She made a gesture like a candle being snuffed out. "Among my people, such bonds are meant to last lifetimes. When they're severed suddenly, it can destroy the survivor. But you survived. Barely. For decades, I merely existed. Until you came." She looked at him then, her opalescent eyes holding something he'd never seen there before. "Hope. You've awakened." Something I thought had died with him. The admission hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Kieran felt his heart racing, acutely aware of every breath, every beat of silence. "Vexandra," he began, but she placed a finger gently against his lips. "I know what you would say, that we are different species from different worlds, that I'm centuries older than you, that your lifespan is but a moment compared to mine." Her touch was soft, electric, but gardens have taught me something important, that the most beautiful growths often come from the most unexpected combinations. That evening, she invited him to her private chambers for the first time. The rooms were a masterpiece of Zephyrian architecture, crystalline walls that seemed to pulse with their own light, furniture that appeared grown rather than built, and everywhere, the subtle presence of advanced technology seamlessly integrated with organic beauty. She prepared tea, with her own hands, the ritual intimate and careful. When they sat together on her floating divan, the space between them felt charged with possibility. "On my world," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we have a custom. When two souls recognize each other, they share what we call the touch of knowing, a moment where barriers fall away completely." "What does it involve?" Kieran asked, his mouth suddenly dry. Instead of answering with words, she reached for him, her hands framing his face. Her touch was warm, almost vibrating with energy. "Close your eyes," she whispered. When their foreheads touched, Kieran gasped. It wasn't telepathy exactly, but something deeper, a sharing of essence that let him feel her emotions as if they were his own. Her decades of loneliness flooded through him, followed by the gradual warmth that had grown since his arrival, and underneath it all, a growing love that took his breath away. Through the connection, he felt her experiencing his own feelings, his wonder at her beauty, his genuine care for her well-being, and yes, his own deepening love. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily, their foreheads still touching. "Now you know," she whispered, "what you have come to mean to me." Kieran's response was to cup her face in his calloused hands and kiss her gently, reverently. Her lips were soft and warm, tasting of the exotic tea and something uniquely her. When they parted, her skin glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "The gardens aren't the only thing blooming here," he murmured against her ear, making her laugh, that beautiful silver bell sound he'd grown to love. The night of the double moon convergence arrived with an almost magical quality to the air. Kieran had read about this rare celestial event in the Zephyrian agricultural texts. When both moons aligned, their combined light was said to have special properties, making it the perfect time to plant the most delicate and precious flowers. He had been saving something special for this night: seeds of Terran moonflowers, genetically adapted to grow in Zephyrian soil. They would only bloom in moonlight, creating cascades of luminescent white petals that would complement the natural glow of Vexandra's world. Are you certain they will take root here? Vexandra asked, kneeling beside him in the garden's heart. She wore a gown of midnight blue that seemed to absorb and reflect the moonlight, making her appear almost ethereal. Her hair was unbound, tonight, falling like a silver waterfall down her back. We'll find out together, Kieran replied, carefully placing each seed in the prepared soil. His hands were steady despite the way his pulse quickened each time she leaned close enough for him to catch her intoxicating scent. The moonlight cast everything in silver and shadow, transforming the already beautiful garden into something from a dream. The bioluminescent plants native to Zephos glowed softly, creating pools of colored light throughout the restored pathways. The sound of the fountain provided a gentle melody, accompanied by the soft chiming of crystal wind chimes, hanging from the flowering trees. There, Kieran said, patting down the last bit of soil. Now we wait and see if love can cross the stars. Is that what you think this is? Vexandra asked, her voice soft in the moonlit air. Love crossing the stars? Kieran sat back on his heels, looking at her directly. What would you call it? She was quiet for a long moment, her opalescent eyes reflecting the twin moons above. Among my people we have a word, Velthara. It means the unexpected gift that transforms everything. I think that's what you are to me, Kieran, my Velthara. The intimacy of the moment, the beauty of the setting, and the weight of her words combined to create something electric between them. When Kieran reached for her hand, she didn't hesitate to take it, their fingers intertwining. Naturally. I've been thinking about what you shared with me, he said, referring to their touch of knowing from weeks before, about Zephyrian bonding customs. Have you? Her skin began to pulse gently, that telltale sign of deep emotion. Is it possible? For someone like me to bond with someone like you? Vexandra's breath caught. The possibility exists, but, Kieran, you must understand what it would mean. A Zephyrian bond is not like human love, it's deeper, more permanent. Once formed, we feel each other's emotions across any distance. Your joy becomes mine, your pain becomes mine, and when one dies, the other feels it completely. Kieran finished. I know. I've done my research. Then you understand why I've been afraid to let this grow beyond what it already is, she whispered. I couldn't bear to lose someone that way again. Kieran lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. But isn't the risk worth it? To feel that connected, that understood? For your brief human lifespan? The pain in her voice was evident. I would have perhaps 50 of your years with you, then centuries of loss. Maybe, Kieran said quietly. Or maybe we'd have 50 years of something so beautiful it would be worth any amount of grief. Besides, he added with a small smile, human genetic science is advancing. Life extension isn't impossible anymore. She studied his face in the moonlight, searching for something. You would truly want this? Knowing the complications, the unknowns? Instead of answering immediately, Kieran stood and helped her to her feet. In the center of the moonlit garden, surrounded by the fruits of their shared labor, he took both her hands in his. Vexandra, I came here to restore your gardens. I never expected to find something that would restore me too. You've shown me colors I never knew existed, taught me about patience and growth in ways I never imagined. If there's a chance for us to build something lasting together, I want to take it. Her luminescent skin grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The bonding ritual is intimate, irreversible. I understand. It requires perfect trust, complete vulnerability. I trust you with my life. She searched his eyes one final time, then nodded slowly. Then we begin with this. She placed her hands over his heart, and he mirrored the gesture. Immediately, he felt that familiar tingle of connection, but stronger now, more focused. Her emotions flowed through him. Love, fear, hope, and desperate longing all tangled together. Close your eyes, she whispered. And when he did, the world transformed. The bond that formed between them in that moonlit garden was unlike anything either had experienced. It started as warmth spreading from their touching palms, then grew into something that encompassed their entire beings. Their heartbeats synchronized, their breathing matched, and their very souls seemed to recognize each other across the vast differences of species and worlds. When they opened their eyes, everything had changed. The garden around them seemed more vivid, more alive, and they could feel each other's presence like a warm glow in their minds. "Hello, my Velthara," Vexandra whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Hello, beloved," Kieran replied, the Zephyrian word for bonded mate flowing naturally from his lips despite never having learned it. Around them, as if responding to the power of their newly formed bond, the moonflower seeds began to sprout, sending up tiny green shoots that would bloom before dawn. 6 months had passed since the night of the double moons, and the estate had transformed beyond recognition. The gardens now rivaled any in the star system, a perfect fusion of Earth botanical artistry and Zephyrian natural beauty. But more importantly, both Kieran and Vexandra had bloomed alongside their shared creation. The bond between them had deepened with each passing day. Kieran had learned to navigate the constant awareness of her emotions, finding it comforting rather than overwhelming. Through their connection, Vexandra experienced human feelings, with an intensity that both thrilled and sometimes surprised her. Their love had grown into something unique, neither purely human nor Zephyrian, but something entirely their own. "The Botanical Council is arriving today," Vexandra announced, gliding into the garden where Kieran was training a climbing vine around a newly installed trellis. Her excitement sparkled through their bond before she even spoke. The Zephyrian Botanical Council had heard about the estate's miraculous restoration and wanted to document the innovative techniques that had merged human and alien gardening methods. More importantly, they wanted to offer Kieran a permanent position as head botanist for the Planetary Preservation Project. "Nervous?" Vexandra asked, though she could feel his emotions clearly. "A little," Kieran admitted, setting down his tools to pull her into his arms. Even after months, the simple pleasure of holding her never faded. "It's a big opportunity, but it would mean staying permanently on Zephos." "And is that what you want?" she asked, though they both knew the answer. They'd discussed this possibility many times, weighing the implications. "I want to be wherever you are," Kieran said simply. "Earth will always be my birth world, but this place, with you, this feels like home." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the council delegation. 3 elderly Zephyrians whose skin glowed with the accumulated wisdom of centuries. They moved through the gardens with expressions of wonder, occasionally stopping to examine particularly successful hybrid plantings or to admire the seamless integration of Earth and Zephyrian flora. "Remarkable," murmured Council Elder Treshmar, kneeling to study a bed where Terran roses grew alongside native crystal flowers, their roots somehow intertwined beneath the soil. "The symbiosis is perfect. How did you achieve this level of integration?" Kieran exchanged a glance with Vexandra. "Understanding," he said finally. Both the plants and their gardeners needed to learn to work together, to complement rather than compete. The elder's knowing smile suggested he understood the deeper meaning behind those words. After the official inspection concluded, Elder Treshmar approached them privately. "Lady Vexandra, young Kieran, the council has a proposal that extends beyond the botanical position." They waited, curious and slightly apprehensive. "We would like to establish an interspecies agricultural exchange program with your estate as the primary research facility. You would work together to develop techniques for growing earth crops in alien soil throughout the outer colonies, and vice versa. It would be groundbreaking work, literally and figuratively." The offer was everything they could have hoped for, a chance to build something meaningful together while advancing both their fields. "There's something else," the elder continued. "The medical division has been following your bonding with great interest. The successful psychological and physiological integration between species opens possibilities we never imagined. They would like to study the process, with your permission, to help other interspecies couples." Vexandra's hand found Kieran's, their fingers intertwining automatically. Through their bond, he felt her excitement mixed with protectiveness. She wanted to help others but was cautious about their privacy. "We'd need to maintain some boundaries," Kieran said carefully. "Our relationship isn't just research data." Of course, Elder Treshamar assured them. "You would have complete control over what you choose to share. Think of yourselves as pioneers rather than test subjects." That evening, they walked through their gardens as the twin suns set, painting the sky in familiar shades of amber and rose. The moonflowers were beginning to open, preparing for their nightly show, and the crystal trees chimed softly in the evening breeze. "A year ago, I never would have imagined this," Vexandra said, leaning against Kieran's shoulder as they sat on their favorite bench by the fountain. "I was prepared to spend eternity alone tending memories in an overgrown garden, and I was just a gardener looking for work," Kieran replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Amazing how life can surprise you. Do you think we'll make it work? The research program, the exchange initiative, everything?" Kieran considered the question, feeling the steady warmth of their bond looking out over the garden they'd created together. Impossible things growing in harmony, beautiful beyond anything either could have achieved alone. "I think we've already proven that the most unlikely things can not only survive but thrive, given the right conditions," he said. "Love, patience, understanding, and good soil." Vexandra laughed, that silver bell sound that still made his heart skip. "Very philosophical for a gardener. Very practical for a philosopher," he countered, making her laugh again. As full darkness fell and the moonflowers opened in cascades of luminescent white, they sat together in comfortable silence, feeling each other's contentment through their bond. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new growth, new possibilities. But tonight, in their garden under alien stars, they had everything they needed. The estate that had once been a monument to loss had become a celebration of new life, new love, and the endless possibility that exists when two souls, no matter how different, choose to grow together. In the distance, the first shoots of their newest project were beginning to emerge from the soil, a grove of hybrid trees that would bear fruit unlike anything either world had seen before, nourished by alien earth and tended by hands that had learned love transcends all boundaries. Their story was just beginning to bloom.